Hi, my name is Dr. Parkilau. I'm a clinical psychologist licensed in the state of California. I earned my PhD in 2024 in clinical psychology. And today I'm going to talk about some of the main signs of high functioning anxiety. So, people are often interested in this idea of high functioning anxiety because they feel like they're doing reasonably well in their day to day, like they're functioning, but it always feels like they're kind of walking around a little bit wounded. Like it always feels like they're on edge, feeling really restless, and they might not really know why. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the signs that you might be struggling with anxiety, even when you are functioning well in your day to day. So, along those lines of thinking, the first sign of high functioning anxiety is simply by all metrics of society, you are doing quite well. So, maybe you're getting straight A's in college, maybe you're working a high performing job and you're loved by your clients and your bosses. And whenever you go to a family gathering, the aunties and uncles are all in awe of you because you're the gold standard of what it means to be a great son or daughter or child. And one of the reasons why this can happen is that because of the excessive anxiety, people respond to it in, one or two ways. One way is through distraction. So some people notice the excess amount of anxiety and they might be like, oh my gosh, like I can't handle this. I'm going to turn to video games or alcohol or something to distract myself because this is way too overwhelming. Whereas a second group of individuals, these maybe more high functioning anxiety individuals, tend to actually leverage and sublimate their anxiety and use it for significant preparation. So I'm just going to study this exam until the point where I know every last thing, every last detail. So as a result, you're going to do pretty darn well on that exam. Or if I have this presentation coming up, I'm going to memorize every line. I'm going to prepare for this and make sure I've, crossed every T, dotted every I, make sure that I know everything before I do this presentation or do this test. And of course, they're going to do pretty well. And this behavior is going to be reinforced by society. Everyone's going to congratulate you on your A plus. They're going to congratulate you on your amazing job. So the brain is going to think, okay, like I need to do all this extra preparing. It's actually good for me because it allows me to do so well in so many areas of my life. So people with high functioning anxiety are going to do pretty darn well in the areas that they can control. On the other hand, they might actually find themselves having struggles with places where control and perfectionism doesn't work as well. Like in the context of relationships, we can control what we do, but we can't necessarily control what our partner does or our friends does. And we might notice that we actually have a lot of difficulties in these areas where control cannot be, fully actualized. Same with sleep. Like if we have a lot of anxiety and we want our sleep to be perfect, sleep is actually going to get a little bit further away. So another sign of high functioning anxiety is actually more challenges in areas like relationships, like sleep, places where control cannot be necessarily actualized. So, a third sign of high functioning anxiety is that a person with high functioning anxiety will have a lot of difficulty doing absolutely nothing and being okay with being bored, being okay with doing nothing. And the reason for that is because they notice this general sense of anxiety, unease, restlessness, tension that for them speaks to this idea there is some sort of threat around, there's something that I could be doing, some sort of threat I can be preparing for. So it becomes very hard to just allow themselves to rest and sit there and do nothing. So even though these individuals on the outside, on the surface, look like they have everything together, they're well kept, well put together, on the inside, they can feel like, everything is falling apart because they're constantly thinking about what could go wrong, what should I do to be able to fix that? How can I prepare for every single circumstance or consequence or outcome to make sure that I'm always perfectly ready? So the question then becomes, okay, I have all these signs of high functioning anxiety, or even before I watched this video, I knew I was somebody who is, deemed quote unquote a high functioning anxious person. What do I do with this information? So one strategy I think can be actually quite helpful is to honor where the anxiety serves us and let go of some of the need for control and the perfectionism where it doesn't serve us. Like in the context of a relationship or in the context of sleep, where we know if we're trying to force ourselves to sleep and we're trying to force perfection in our relationships and force how other people need to view us, it's actually going to cause more and more distress and lead counterproductively to the reverse outcome. Like I don't know if you've ever tried to force someone to like you or force someone to do something, like it usually just doesn't really work the way that we hope it would. On the other hand, for something like preparing for a multiple choice test, like the extra preparation, the sort of more perfectionistic qualities is going to help us. So I encourage you to ask yourself, is my behavior in this moment effective towards my goal? So if my goal is to get 100% on an exam, maybe I can lean into the perfectionistic qualities of myself to be able to do really, really well. On the other hand, if my goal is to make sure that I have enough time for my family and friends, and me checking this paper, 100 times is not serving that goal, then maybe I can accept a little bit less of that perfectionism in pursuit of these other values like friends and family or, getting enough sleep, for example. So another question you can ask yourself is, when is good enough? Like in some cases where you're just sending a random email to a colleague, in those cases, maybe I can accept that good is good enough. Or in other cases where I'm preparing for a big interview for a job I really, really want, in that case, I might be able to say, okay, like I do really want to make sure I prepare well. So in this case, my anxiety and what I'm doing to be able to be sort of high functioning is, perfectly sensical, and I should follow what the anxiety is saying. So for the people who do struggle with letting go of control, letting go of that perfectionistic quality, one thing that I find really helpful is to ask yourself the why. Why is it important to let go of some of this control, to let go of some of this effort? For what reason, for what value? So being able to say, I'm letting go of some of my perfectionism about this paper because then it allows me to spend time with family or to give myself some time to do something for myself, like going to watch a movie or, going to my favorite restaurant and eating my favorite food. So understand that this is a sacrifice because the perfectionism, it does serve a purpose to one way, shape, or form. And by letting go of some of that time and effort into doing everything perfectly, what does that give me space to do instead? And by answering that question, it makes that sacrifice a lot more worth it. So hopefully this video was helpful to learn a little bit more about the signs and symptoms of high functioning anxiety, as well as some ways of thinking about this anxiety, where it serves us, where it doesn't, to be able to have a bit more of a flexible framework in how you want to operate in life. And if you're interested in cultivating some practices to reduce anxiety, I'll throw out a couple of my meditation tapes over here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Bye bye.